This video is based on the knowledge of Socrates, the father of philosophy. In a world that is constantly agitated, where we are bombarded by opinions, noise, and distractions, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain mental clarity. But what you may not know is that silence can be a powerful shield against the chaos of the outside world. In Stoicism, we find a philosophy that teaches us how to protect our mind from external turbulences, and silence is one of the most effective ways to do so. Modern society is filled with noise, not only the literal sound of busy streets or the constant buzz of notifications on our phones, but also the endless flow of opinions, demands, and distractions that surround us. We are always being pressured to react, to make quick decisions, and to engage in endless conversations about everything and nothing at the same time. This excess of stimuli can rob us of focus and, more importantly, leave us vulnerable to external influences that often destabilize us emotionally. However, the Stoics teach us that true wisdom comes from our ability to control our minds, especially in turbulent times. One of the fundamental principles of this philosophy is the idea that what lies outside of us, the opinions of others, everyday difficulties, or what others expect from us, should not affect our internal balance. And one of the most powerful ways to cultivate that balance is through silence. Silence, far from being merely the absence of sound, is an active practice of distancing ourselves from everything external. By withdrawing, even if only for brief moments, from the whirlwind of thoughts and stimuli, we can redirect our attention inward and achieve a peace that allows us to observe situations from a new perspective. Silence is not only about what we do not say, it is about what we choose not to allow to influence us. It is in silence that the mind reorganizes itself. When we remove the noise of external distractions, our mind finds the space to reflect, to think clearly, and most importantly, to listen to our true essence. This enables us to make decisions that are more aligned with our genuine values and desires, rather than being carried away by the currents of external chaos. This is one of the deepest teachings of Stoicism. By keeping our mind in silence, we become immune to the pressures of the world. It is not about ignoring what is around us, but consciously choosing not to be dragged by that which is beyond our control. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it." When we quiet our minds, we begin to perceive what truly matters, and in doing so, protect our inner peace. By cultivating moments of silence, we distance ourselves from impulsivity, the urge to react instantly to any situation. Instead, we learn to pause, reflect, and act more consciously. In doing so, we become more resilient to life's adversities, for we do not allow ourselves to be easily swayed by what lies beyond our control. In this sense, silence becomes a powerful defense mechanism against chaos, giving us the opportunity to respond rather than react. Chapter 2. Silence as a space for reflection. Silence, as Socrates taught, is the key to deep self-knowledge. It is not merely the absence of noise, but the space where we can turn inward, reflect on our actions, and examine our motivations. By quieting the mind, we create the ideal conditions to understand our choices and, more importantly, to recognize what we truly desire in life. Self-knowledge is one of the pillars of Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, understanding oneself is fundamental to living a virtuous and balanced life. And the only way to truly know ourselves is to pause and reflect on our attitudes, thoughts, and emotions. However, In a world full of distractions, this reflection becomes increasingly difficult. This is where silence becomes an indispensable ally. When we are in silence, we are forced to face our own mind. There are no external distractions to pull us away from what is happening inside us. By creating a space of quietude, we make room for genuine introspection. In this state of silence, we can question our beliefs, assess our actions, and, above all, understand our deepest motivations. Socrates, with his famous maxim, "Know thyself," shows us that the path to wisdom begins with self-observation and reflection. Silence, therefore, is not just a temporary pause. It is a process of personal discovery. By embracing silence, we have the opportunity to question who we truly are, what we aspire to achieve in life, and whether our actions align with our most authentic values. The constant noise of the world often pushes us away from ourselves, leading us to make decisions influenced by external expectations. But in silence, we return to the center of our own being, where we can view our choices from a clearer and truer perspective. Additionally, silence provides a sense of calm that fosters deep thought. In moments of peace, we are better able to notice the details of our life and mind. We can identify behavioral patterns that often go unnoticed amid the day-to-day hustle. Such reflection does not occur automatically. It requires us to make space for our deepest thoughts without haste or judgment. By practicing silence consistently, we can gain a clear understanding of our desires, fears, and needs. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true freedom comes from acting in accordance with what we understand about ourselves, not from conforming to what others expect. And that understanding is only possible when we can look deeply and sincerely within ourselves, something that only silence can provide. Thus, by incorporating silence into our daily lives, we not only distance ourselves from external distractions, but also create a space where true reflection can occur. This is one of the greatest legacies of Stoicism, teaching us to pause, think, and reflect so that we may live more consciously, aligned with our principles, and better prepared to act wisely. Chapter 3. Silence as a tool for self-control. Self-control, as taught by Stoic philosophy, is one of the greatest treasures we can cultivate. In a world where we are constantly stimulated to react with impatience, anger, or anxiety, silence emerges as an essential practice to control our emotions and actions. By taking the time to pause and reflect, we are able to make more conscious decisions rather than giving in to the impulse of the moment. We live in an age of rapid reactions. We are constantly provoked by stimuli, a harsh comment, an unexpected situation, or a setback. The immediate reaction might be anger, fear, or frustration. However, the Stoics teach us that true strength lies in our ability to pause and reflect before acting. And that pause is often provided by silence. When confronted with a challenge, the temptation to react impulsively is great. We want to defend our ideas, correct someone, or flee from an uncomfortable situation immediately. But what Stoic philosophers teach is that by withdrawing into a moment of silence, we allow space for emotional control. In that silence, we find the calm necessary to avoid an automatic reaction and instead choose the wiser and more rational course of action. Silence offers the opportunity to observe our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. When we are silent, we can feel anger or frustration without the urge to immediately express or act on them. Silence helps us create a healthy distance between the external stimulus and our internal reaction, allowing us to respond with clarity as individuals in command of our own minds. One of the great masters of self-control, Epictetus, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it." This means that what truly affects us is not the event itself, but our interpretation of it. When we allow emotions to take command, it is because we are reacting based on our immediate perception, without careful analysis. Silence provides that reflective space where we can reassess our responses and decide if they truly align with our desired outcomes. The practice of silence is also intimately linked to the Stoic notion of apatheia, the ability to remain calm and serene in the face of adversity. By embracing silence, we train our minds not to be so easily swayed by external circumstances. Over time, this becomes a habit, a way of life where our emotions no longer control our actions, but rather we control our emotions. Thus, silence is not merely a moment of rest. It is a powerful tool for strengthening our self-control. It teaches us to breathe before reacting, to reflect before making decisions, and to act with a clarity that is only possible when we are not being swept away by our feelings. Chapter 4. Silence as a practice of acceptance. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, but a practice of deep acceptance. As Stoicism teaches, much of our suffering arises from our resistance to reality. When we accept what is without trying to fight against the natural flow of things, we find peace. In this context, silence is the language of acceptance. By quieting our minds, we can accept what we cannot change without the burden of resistance. Resistance to what we cannot control is one of the main sources of suffering in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. What lies beyond our control, the actions of others, the behavior of the world around us, even the weather, should not cause us distress. Pain arises when we resist these external realities, attempting to change or control what is inevitable. This is where silence becomes a powerful practice of acceptance. By quieting our minds and our reactions, we allow reality to be as it is, without the need to judge or react emotionally to it. Silence teaches us to stop fighting against the natural flow of life and to accept the present exactly as it presents itself. Acceptance does not mean passive resignation. It is the acknowledgement that there are things we simply cannot change. Stoics like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius emphasize the importance of accepting life circumstances without lament or frustration. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently writes about the necessity of accepting fate as part of the natural order of the universe. He reminds us that everything that happens is in accordance with nature, and therefore we should seek not to fight events, but to accept them with serenity. In this context, silence functions as a tool for practicing acceptance. By removing the constant pressure to react, we open ourselves to simply experiencing what is. There is no longer a need to justify, interpret, or control external situations. Silence enables us to experience life more fully and with less resistance, creating space for inner peace. Accepting what we cannot change is undoubtedly one of the most challenging lessons of Stoic philosophy. Our natural tendency is to try to control everything around us, from people's behavior to the course of events. However, by practicing silence, we train our mind to be at peace with what happens, without the anxiety that things must be different. This state of acceptance is liberating, freeing us from the burden of suffering caused by our constant struggle against reality. Therefore, silence is not merely a means to escape the world. It is an active practice of acceptance. It is through silence that we learn to let go of control and embrace life as it is, and with all its imperfections, challenges, and unpredictabilities. In doing so, we find a serenity that allows us to live more fully and peacefully, in harmony with the flow of existence. Chapter 5. Silence as a means to strengthen virtue. In Stoic philosophy, virtue is the greatest good we can achieve, and true virtue is not about acting impulsively, but about acting with wisdom, self-control, and justice. In this context, silence is an essential tool for cultivating these virtues. By practicing silence, we create space for reflection and internal discipline, crucial elements for developing a virtuous character. Virtue in Stoicism is not something automatically attained. It requires constant practice, reflection, and often moments of quiet to discern the best actions to take. The central idea of Stoic philosophy is that our actions should be guided by reason, not by impulsive desires or external pressures. And silence, as a daily practice, is one of the most effective means to cultivate that rational orientation. By embracing silence, we create a space to reflect on our actions and intentions. In the rush of everyday life, we often act without thinking, driven by fear, anger, or the desire to please others. But silence allows us to break this cycle and reevaluate our behavior. It gives us the time necessary to consider whether our actions align with our deepest values, or if we are merely reacting on autopilot. It is also in silence that we can strengthen the virtue of wisdom. Wisdom does not come from external sources, but is cultivated over time through introspection and continuous learning. Silence allows us to listen to our inner voice, the one that guides us to do what is right, even when it is difficult. In moments of quiet, we can absorb the lessons that life and our experiences offer without the distractions that hinder our learning. Additionally, silence is a practice of self-control, another essential Stoic virtue. When faced with challenges such as criticism, injustice, or frustration, our instinct is often to react impulsively. Silence helps us avoid these automatic responses. It gives us the opportunity to pause and reflect before speaking or acting, enabling us to act with moderation and balance. This self-control is closely tied to the virtue of justice, as it allows us to act more fairly and ethically, without being swayed by emotions or external pressures. Finally, silence reinforces the virtue of humility. In silence, we are forced to acknowledge that not everything we think or do is perfect. Silence teaches us to listen, to learn from others, and to reflect on our own limitations. It reminds us that true virtue is not about knowing everything or being better than others, but about being able to reflect, learn, and act with fairness and balance. Thus, silence is not merely a pause, but an active tool to strengthen the virtues that make us better human beings. It helps us act with wisdom, make just decisions, and practice self-control, essential elements for living a life aligned with Stoic principles. True moral strength comes from the ability to act with discernment, and silence provides the space to develop that discernment deeply and enduringly. Chapter 6. Silence as a path to inner freedom. Freedom, as the Stoics teach us, is not about escaping external difficulties, but about mastering our own minds. In this context, silence becomes the path to true freedom. By silencing the noises of the world and our internal pressures, we can finally achieve the freedom to be who we truly are, without the external influences that shape our actions and thoughts. We live in a world where we often feel trapped, whether by the expectations of others, societal pressures, or the constant distractions that invade our minds. Most people seek external freedom, financial freedom, freedom of expression, or the freedom to do whatever they want. However, true freedom, according to the Stoics, is found within ourselves. For Stoic philosophers, we are truly free when we can liberate ourselves from the dependency on external factors for our happiness and well-being. When we manage, through reason, to govern our thoughts, actions, and emotions, we reach a state of inner freedom. And silence is the key to this freedom. By quieting our minds, we distance ourselves from external pressures and internal turmoil, creating the space to live more authentically and autonomously. In today's world, it is easy to get lost in the endless quest for external validation. The pursuit of approval, whether on social media or in the workplace, can leave us hostage to others. However, silence offers a break from that relentless pursuit. It allows us to pause and look within, where we discover that our true freedom does not depend on external validation, but on our ability to act according to what is genuinely important to us. This inner freedom does not come from a life without challenges, but from the way we respond to those challenges. Silence gives us the opportunity to respond thoughtfully and rationally, rather than reacting impulsively and being overwhelmed by our emotions. In this way, silence grants us the freedom to act with awareness and purpose, rather than being swept away by stress and anxiety. Moreover, silence teaches us to be present in the moment without the need to worry about the future or dwell in the past. When we embrace silence, we allow our mind to focus entirely on the present, free from the distractions that keep us from experiencing our true reality. This presence is a form of freedom, as it allows us to live fully and without regret. Finally, silence liberates us from the expectations we impose on ourselves. Often, we feel pressured to be something we are not, to meet expectations that are not truly ours. In silence, we can finally hear our true voice and discern what we really desire in life, free from the pressure to please others or conform to societal norms. This freedom to be who we truly are is undoubtedly the purest form of freedom we can attain. Thus, silence is not just a temporary refuge from the world's clamor. It is the path to true inner freedom. By embracing silence, we free ourselves from the chains that bind us and begin to live according to our true essence, in harmony with what truly matters. Silence as a path to personal transformation. Throughout this journey, we have explored the transformative power of silence through the lens of Stoic philosophy. As we have seen, silence is not simply the absence of sound, but a profound practice that allows us to reflect, accept, cultivate virtue, and achieve true inner freedom. Silence invites us to take a step back from the turbulence of life. It offers us the chance to pause, reflect, and make decisions with greater clarity and control. By applying the lessons of the Stoics, we come to understand that in moments of silence, our true freedom and peace do not depend on the external world, but on the way we choose to respond to it. Every chapter we explored shows us that in silence we have the power to look inward, improve our self-control, and act in alignment with our values. It teaches us acceptance in the face of what we cannot change, strengthens our pursuit of virtue, and leads us to inner freedom, far from the pressures and distractions of the outside world. By integrating silence into your daily life, you not only distance yourself from the chaos of the external world, but also create the necessary space for your true essence to flourish. Silence is a powerful practice of self-discovery, wisdom, and emotional control. If you felt that today's lessons resonated with your search for a more balanced and conscious life, take a moment to reflect on how silence can transform your daily routine. Set aside moments to be with yourself, away from distractions. Only then will you begin to notice the benefits that silence can bring to your personal journey. If you enjoyed this video, share it with friends who are also seeking transformation, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content on personal development, philosophy, and psychology. Leave a comment below sharing how silence has impacted your life, and stay tuned for upcoming videos. Remember, wisdom begins in silence, and it is in that space that true transformation occurs.